Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the first episode on Introduction to Mindfulness, where we talked about the various definitions of mindfulness, mostly all definitions encompassing some aspect of paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment, whether that's using terms and phrases such as paying attention to moment experience, paying attention to present moment experience with openness and curiosity and a willingness to be with what is. They all have this encompassing quality of consciously choosing to pay attention to something and having there be an openness and curiosity to what's happening, not needing to change it, not resisting it, and not judging it. There's no right or wrong, especially what's happening in the present moment, because that is happening. It's like, can't argue with what's happening in the present moment. In essence, this is arising. It might not be pleasant, but it's happening in the present moment. And so therefore, being aware of that and paying attention to what is happening in the present moment is part of mindfulness. We talked about formal and informal practice, how formal practice is what most people would think about when they think about meditation. And I recommend taking at least 5 minutes out of your day to do some sort of formal practice. There's 280 5-minute intervals in the day, and taking at least one where you're doing some formal practice. You're not checking your cell phone. You're not answering the phone, unless, of course, it's an emergency or something like that. But where just for those 5 minutes, you sort of take time for yourself. You can do a formal practice while you're walking, laying down, right before you go to bed, right before you wake up, or when you wake up, but you still stay in bed. You can do a formal practice when you're showering. And, if you just think about the definition of mindfulness, paying attention on purpose to present moment experience without judgment, you can notice the sensation of the water, for instance, from your shower or bath making contact with your skin. Then informal practice, where we integrate this concept of mindfulness throughout our day. And we talked about the 3 Ps: pause, present, and proceed, where just throughout your day, you throw in a pause. You remind yourself, you take a pause. You might have external reminders that can help. Those external reminders include things like, I just heard my cell phone ding. Oh, every time I hear my cell phone ding, I pause. It might be something like every time you turn on your car, if you drive a lot, every time you stop at a red light, every time you drink a cup of coffee or water, that you pause. And in that pause, you bring yourself back to the present moment. And it can be as short as a millisecond. It could be 2 seconds. It could be taking a deep breath and then proceeding. And you just start to notice that it starts to become an integral part of your life. That it's sort of like, I'm noticing I'm a little bit more present. I'm paying attention a little differently. And then we spoke about the anchor being something that you consciously focus on, that you determine prior to your practice. It can be your breath. It can be a sensation, a repetition of a word or sound or prayer. It can be watching a burning flame, looking at a leaf on a plant, a picture of a spiritual figure that you resonate with, or your mother, father, whatever it might be. And so the anchor is important initially, right? We had some discussions about this initially to help concentrate and focus the mind. And then as we kind of get along, we learn how to sort of drop the anchor, that we don't necessarily need something to focus on, that the practice actually is maybe just resting in awareness of what is appearing in the present moment. But there is an aspect, especially as we begin, to help develop the focus and concentration of the mind to help us come back to the present moment. And this helps us understand the nature of our mind, that the mind is constantly, let's say, generating thoughts, that sensations are appearing, that emotions are appearing. And this is why we try to break it up into these different segments, even though it's slightly artificial, that it's okay to do this because it's okay to really understand and investigate and know what is actually appearing for you in the present moment. And then we did a short practice. So today we're really going to focus on thoughts, on a mindfulness of thought. And if you think about, how many thoughts you have a day, you might say to yourself, "Wow, I have a lot of thoughts in that day." There was research out of Harvard that looked at, how many thoughts we actually did have, and there was something like 60,000 thoughts a day or something like that, of which 90% of them you had yesterday. And so we're almost like on a rerun, sort of like a disc that keeps on playing itself, and it's happening in our mind, right? The most important thing to know is that thoughts are normal. Okay. There was a child who was playing at the playground, and he was learning about mindfulness, and I was overhearing his conversation he was having with his mom, and he says, "Yeah, I'm learning mindfulness. I'm learning how to not have thoughts." And I almost there was sort of this pain in my heart, because that's not what mindfulness is, right? That might actually generate more anxiety. That might generate more nervousness, because trying to not have thoughts is probably impossible. Now, that might occur. There might be an occurrence where you might be in a very relaxed state and you might not have a thought, but we're not actually suppressing thoughts. We're not suppressing anything. It's paying attention to actually what is arising. It's paying attention to what is unfolding, right? We're not squashing anything. We're not resisting anything. We're not trying to put anything into a container and saying, "Okay, I'm no thought, no thought, no thought, no thought, no thought." And all you're doing is actually creating more anxiety because you're having so many thoughts. One of the things that may happen when you start paying attention to your thoughts is you might recognize, "Oh my goodness, I have a lot of thoughts." Which, as you can tell, all right, I kind of chuckle about that because we want to take this sort of lightly. There's sort of this lightness, this sort of joy about being able to investigate our mind. And this might cause a little bit of distress in people. It might actually cause some anxiety, that as we start watching the mind, as we start watching and witnessing what the mind is doing, that we start realizing, "Oh my goodness, my mind it's like," right? And often people say, "Well, I can't stop it." Okay, remember, that's not the point. The point is simply to become aware of what is occurring. It's simply to notice. It's simply to be mindful of what is happening. It's not necessary. It's not to stop it from happening. Now, what you might notice is with practice, the frequency of thoughts start to decrease. And that is perfectly fine. We're not changing anything. We're not resisting anything. We're not altering anything. We're simply noticing. And in the noticing, there might be a frequency shift. You might notice more thoughts. You might notice less thoughts, right? But we're not actually suppressing them, okay? The other important thing is that we are learning that we can direct our attention to different things. So, for instance, you can direct your attention to sensations in your body. You can direct your attention. If I hold this pen up, you can focus on the pen. You can focus to sounds that you're hearing. But you can also direct your attention and focus on your thoughts. Okay, so you actually have this sort of conscious ability to direct our attention, and that's another important part of mindfulness to be aware of, that you control where you place your attention. Right? There are many analogies or metaphors that I have used, or that can be used, that many people have used in terms of, I don't really understand what it means to watch my thoughts. Oftentimes, what that is that our awareness is so linked to our thoughts that we don't see a separation. We're not actually able to see that there's an awareness of our thoughts. Okay. And so, essentially, some metaphors that I've used is, imagine that you're a child on a plane, on a grassy field, and you're laying down and you're looking up at the sky, and the sky has clouds in it. And those clouds that come into your sight are your thoughts. And on a nice breezy day where the put yourself in like the most perfect temperature for you, with the most perfect, beautiful flowers around you, with birds or whatever you want right next to you, whoever, persons, people, animals. And you're gazing up into the sky, and the clouds are just perfectly moving over you. And you notice the clouds, and they're changing shapes and figures. And you might even be naming them. Oh, look at that cloud. It looks like a fire-breathing dragon, right? Oh, look at that. It looks like a princess or a unicorn. But you're witnessing these clouds as they're passing by, right? You're in that space of awareness, witnessing the clouds, which would be analogous to the thoughts that come into the space of awareness. We notice them. In fact, the practice that we're going to do today is specifically seeing if we can name our thoughts. What types of thoughts are we having? Witnessing them. And so we see the cloud passing and we go, oh, there's a cloud. And then it passes through, right? And then it goes. And what happens next? You let that cloud go. Right? You're not running after that cloud. You let that cloud go. It's going. And then what happens? Another cloud comes in. Oh, look at that cloud. Okay. Now, the way that you could also see this is that you could be the sky of awareness, the openness. And the sky of awareness is where the clouds pass through. Now, the sky isn't holding on to the clouds. The clouds are in the sky, but the sky isn't holding on to the clouds. And the sky, in fact, doesn't care if those clouds are dark and stormy or light and breezy. The sky simply holds the clouds pass. Now, when they are stormy, or we feel as if we are caught in a storm, doesn't it sometimes feel as if it lasts forever? Like, when is this storm going to leave? And sometimes that's sort of how we identify or have a relationship with our thoughts as well. Oh my goodness, this thought is hovering. It's kind of sticking around a little bit. Okay. And sometimes some thoughts, what we might call have a gooiness, a stickiness. All right. We might feel as if we're more attached to them. We might identify more with those thoughts than others. And so they tend to linger. They tend to sort of linger around. And you could see this as sort of, if you're watching that, there's that one dark cloud that's like not moving. You're like, where's it? Where's that cloud going? Is it coming towards me? Is it going to, but the sky doesn't really pay attention to the cloud. It's not really identified by the cloud. The cloud is there, and then the cloud comes in. And even when it's raining or it's thunderous for a long period of time, have you ever taken a plane and gone through the clouds? And then what happens on the other side? it's like noon, and it's noon, and you take a plane and it's all dark underneath the clouds, and you go through the clouds, and there might be a little bit of the turbulence going through the clouds and rain, and then you get on the other side of the clouds, and what happens? Clear blue sky. Right? Clear blue sky. And that clear blue sky would be analogy of like the sky of awareness, that which is able to hold all thoughts that are being generated. All right. And so one of the practices by witnessing is really learning that thoughts are normal, that they come and go. All right. One of the biggest realizations is, and to just pay attention for yourself, is do you believe your thoughts? Do you believe your thoughts? Oftentimes we believe our thoughts. We feel as if they're self-generated, and every thought we have, we feel as if it's this, new amazing discovery or something like that. And so we believe them. We believe almost every thought that we have. Right. So the first thing to sort of look at is, am I believing my thoughts? Investigating, why am I believing my thought when it's just a thought? Have you ever had a thought that was completely wrong or off the wall? Have you ever had a thought that you have no idea where it came from? I can't have thoughts like that. That's not who I am, right? And all of a sudden, there are thoughts that are appearing in that way. If we see these as simple energy patterns, and we are manifestations of energy, then it's just an energy pattern. Wow. You can have any thought that could ever exist. Imagine that. And you don't have to believe it. Right? So in this practice, one of the things that you might become aware of is that, wow, I've really believed a lot of the thoughts that I have that are generated. I really believe them, and I've acted on them, and they have either gotten me to different places in life. In a lot of mindfulness practices, people say your mind can be your worst enemy or your best friend. An untrained mind, a mind that, for instance, attaches to all of its thoughts and believes all of its beliefs, may actually drive somebody into depression or anxiety. Where if we start to understand the nature of the mind and the nature of thoughts and how thoughts emerge, and that we can have a thought that maybe is not you per se, but it's just a thought. And so we don't have to attach onto it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I had that thought. I'm such a bad person. I had that thought. What am I going to do? I need to cleanse my mind of these thoughts, right? As opposed to being like, well, because all that judgment is occurring, now that thought is becoming a cloud in your awareness. And the stickiness is there because there's a judgment, there's resistance of just letting it go, letting it pass. Right. Another analogy could be one of awareness, the witnessing presence, for instance, being the ocean, and thoughts being waves that come out of the ocean. That the wave identifies itself as a wave, that the ocean, when it creates a wave, identifies itself as a wave, let's say, and says, oh, I am now a wave, but doesn't realize that the wave is actually just made of water molecules, which were and always will be part of the ocean, let's say. Unless they get evaporated, and then we go into a whole different story, and now they become clouds. So it's all the frame of reference that we're using to see, okay, kind of asking the question, who am I? Some people have used the analogy of, watching water in a stream, watching leaves pass through a stream, or watching a waterfall. That the waterfall, there's this constant flow of water, this constant flow of thoughts, and we can sort of sit back as the witnessing presence and observe them, not becoming identified with them, not having to believe them, but simply observing. And we'll kind of go into a few practices of how to actually do that. One of the good ways of doing this, and we'll just do this for a bit, for about a minute or so, is imagine. Have you ever seen like a Tom and Jerry cartoon, where the cat is like watching the mouse, and imagine as if the cat, you're watching a mouse hole in a wall. Okay. And every time you see the mouse poking its head out the wall, you count 1. And then the mouse sees the cat and goes back in. And then then the mouse comes out and looks. Oh, there's the mouse again. Oh, go back in. Okay. So this exercise is similar to that. There is the witnessing presence, which would be the cat. And then there's the observation of thought. And so you don't have to close your eyes. If you do want to close your eyes, you can. But just for these next, for this minute, I'm going to time you. All right. Just count how many thoughts you have. As if you are the cat watching the mouse. As if you are witnessing presence. Just counting. Oh, there's another thought. There's another thought. Now, it's not about the absolute number, because some thoughts might be longer than others. You might have a long thought. You might have a short thought. You might have multiple repetitive thoughts, or 3 or 4 long thoughts. It's not about the absolute number. The practice is really about being able to witness and observe. Right? Can you be the cat that's just simply observing the mouse coming out of the hole? Because thoughts appear, right? Sort of like coming out of the hole. They appear. And so noticing that is part of the practice. Oh, wow, there's another thought. And there's another, and there's another thought. Okay. So you can close your eyes or not if you don't want to. I'm going to time you for a minute and just count. Be like, oh, there's one thought. There's another thought. There's another. And if you start thinking, wow, I'm having a lot of thoughts, that's another thought. And if you start judging yourself based on the number of thoughts that you're having, that's another thought. And do you see how it can go into, I mean, you can really kind of go down this trajectory of, oh my goodness, now I'm having thoughts about having thoughts, and I'm thinking that I need to watch my thoughts having thoughts. Okay, so let's just take this next minute and just count how many thoughts you have starting now. And stop. And just sort of reflect to yourself on that practice. Was it difficult? Was it nauseating? Was it interesting? Was it, whatever it might be for you? But the important part is to notice this thought process. All right. That this is the beginning of liberation. This is the beginning of some freedom from attachment to thoughts, from that stickiness, that believing that every thought. Okay. And so there's some fun things that we're going to do, right? One is we're going to start in our practice today. We're going to name our thoughts. So you may have noticed you might have different types of thoughts. There's thoughts like planning, there's imagining, there's ruminating, there's judging, right? Notice what patterns arise for you, right? Do you have a pattern of thoughts? Wow, I judge a lot, or I'm always planning. I feel like, it's like when I sit down in meditation, the first thing I notice is I'm planning the next 3 hours, right? Is there a pattern? What is that pattern for you? And just notice it, recognize it, right? Is there a judging pattern? Some of us even joke about our top 10, the Billboard top 10 thoughts. What's your number one thought that is just ding, ding, ding? If you have 60,000 thoughts, what's the one that occurs 10,000 times in your day, right? Now, there's nothing we need to do about it. And that's the beauty of it. Simply witnessing it, simply being aware of it. And in a way, when we notice it, labeling can help us start to identify them as separate entities, as sort of different clouds that come into the sky, right? Just like you're just like, oh, look at that cloud. That's a fire-breathing dragon. Oh, look at that. There's my judging thought. There's my planning thought. Huh. And all we say is, wow, that's interesting. That's really interesting. You can say, oh, thanks for coming today. You can ask yourself, do I need to believe it? I don't need to believe it. Start with that, right? Oh, that's really interesting. Remember that openness and curiosity we talked about yesterday? Do the same thing with the thoughts. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Huh. And just like the cloud, wow, look at that cloud. It's got an interesting shape. Oh, there it goes. Oh, here's another cloud. It's an interesting shape. Doing the exact same thing with our thoughts. Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for appearing. Look at that. Look at that thought. That's a judging thought. That's a planning thought. Okay. Even saying to yourself, wow, that's just a thought. Huh. I don't need to believe it. Well, that's interesting. You see how you can actually start to have a little bit of fun with this. Okay. We can name them. We can normalize them, right? We're not trying to resist them. We're not trying to judge them. We're not even saying there's right or wrong thoughts. All right. There's no good or bad thoughts. It is simply a thought. It is an energy pattern that has appeared in awareness, and that's it. All right. That we start to see that thoughts come and go. That our mind is a thought generating machine. Right? And when we become aware of that, now we can just witness this thought generating machine being like, wow, this is actually really interesting and fascinating. And we perceive this with sort of an openness and curiosity, right? What are the types of thoughts that I'm having, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then if we get to that point, we can ask ourselves, well, who or what is aware of the thoughts that are arising? Who or what is aware? Who or what is that witnessing presence? If we get to that point, right? If you feel like, oh, wow, I can really notice the thoughts come. And as a new thought arises, I can really, you can almost experience it arise. And then you can even notice, how long does it last? Are there thought groups that are more sticky for our individual self, whatever that might be, that stick around for a little longer? I feel like I believe more, right? Is it cultural? Is it what I've been told by my family the church, my state, whatever it might be. Okay? They stick around. Oh, I tend to believe thoughts that, let's say, my parents told me. Right? One of the best things they told us when we went to medical school was, I kid you not, 50% of what we're going to teach you, we're going to find out in the next few years is wrong. Wow. That's coming from, our medical school, first day of school. And yet we're told to believe the thoughts that we're being taught, right? But yet with new research and new therapeutics and stuff like that, it comes out that, 50% of what they were going to teach us was actually going to be wrong in the first place. So let's go into our practice for today. Okay, so let's find a comfortable position. A position you feel relaxed yet alert. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable closing your eyes. If not, having a soft downward gaze. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. And with each in-breath, inviting your body to relax ever so slightly more. And with each out-breath, releasing any tension that you may feel in your body. And allowing whatever support surface you are on to really hold you. And then breathing regularly and naturally for you. For this practice, if there's a anchor you wish to start with, a place you can direct your attention to that you feel safe, that you feel as if you can direct your attention. And as your mind wanders, that you come back to your anchor. This could be your breath, it could be the sensation, it could be an open feeling in your heart. Could also be the repetition of a word or phrase or prayer. Anything that is authentic for you, that helps you focus your attention. Something that you can come back to over and over again. And for this practice, we'll be going from our resource to mindfulness of thought. Mindfulness of thought. To notice the thoughts that we have. As you focus your attention on your resource, notice any thoughts that arise in the present moment. See if you can be aware of them. Can you label it or name it? Thinking mind. Thinking, thinking. Can you actually classify it? Is it planning, remembering, judging, worrying, imagining? Whatever it might be. Noticing it simply as a thought, with openness and curiosity. A thought. How long does it last? How quickly does the next thought come in? Can you notice that one as well? Name it. Witness it. And if you wish, return to your resource. As thoughts arise, can you notice the thinking process? How quickly do you believe a thought that arises spontaneously in your awareness? Can you name it? Can you witness it? As if you were watching a cloud overhead pass through. You watch the thought arise. You observe the thought with openness and curiosity. You let it pass. It's just a thought. There's no suppressing. There's no resisting. Simply allowing the present moment to be just as it is. And if your mind is pulled away by a thought, recognizing that, how quickly it is to get lost in thought. Being aware. Can you simply name the thought and not become too attached with it or believe it? Do some thoughts have a greater impact or effect on your body, mind, and spirit? And notice that. If you're having a lot of thoughts, and noticing your racing mind, that is perfectly okay. If you have few thoughts, what is your experience in the space between thoughts? You may ask yourself, who is thinking? Who is aware of the thoughts? Can you open your awareness to be the vast sky, holding all the clouds as they come and go? It's just a thought. And if at any point it becomes too difficult, simply directing your attention back to your resource, to your anchor. That safe place you can direct your attention to. And then noticing the thinking mind, the patterns of thought that are generated. Who is thinking? Who or what is aware of the thought? And as we bring this meditation to a close, just simply noticing how you can bring mindfulness of thought into your daily practice. To be aware of your thinking mind. And now bringing our attention back to our resource, our anchor. Taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. Opening our eyes if our eyes are closed. Reorienting yourself to your room and surroundings. And just taking a moment to reflect on your practice of mindfulness of thought.